Welcome to OLR Connections, the Ohio Lodge of Research podcast, where we bring together the brothers of the Ohio Lodge of Research to discuss a number of different topics relevant to the research and Masonry today. Today, we have a conversation with brothers Chuck Suscheck, Elie Harriet, and Rocky Jackson as they consider the future of the Ohio Lodge of Research and where their current interests are leading them.
I'm Chuck Suscheck. I've been a Master Mason just for under a year, and I'm from High Point 773. That's where you want to be.
My name's Elie Harriet. I'm in Mansfield. I'm from Mansfield Lodge 35, which is, I believe, currently looking for a new location as they just sold their building. So not sure where that's going to be coming up. I've been a Master Mason since 2022, and the Ohio Lodge of Research was the first thing that I wanted to do once I got my third degree.
I'm Rocky Jackson. I'm in Washington Lodge number 17, which is in Hamilton. I've been a Mason just a little bit under 4 years now. And the Ohio Lodge of Research was one of the first things that I became involved in, mainly because I like to learn and do research.
What is the definition of Masonic education and or Masonic research?
For me, I mean, like I said, everybody's got their own reasons for joining the Masons, right? For me, one of my primary reasons was Masonic education. And for me, Masonic education is understanding the world around me because there's so much Masonic symbolism, Masonic words, at least in the English language. So many things with relation to the Freemasons that just being a part of this organization to me is about learning more about the world and the culture and the community around me.
I would say that one of the things that we have to be careful of when we talk about Masonic education and research, most people think of the education or the research as just being a probe into history. And, history can be exciting. And it can be the opposite of exciting too, if it's not communicated well and not tied to current events or the current situation. So that's one of the things that I find rather interesting is the marrying of education and research in such a way that it can be communicated that it's lively as well as engaging for those listening.
I kind of view it as a very, very broad topic. You can pretty much make it whatever you want to actually end up making it. But the thing that you've got to derive back to is your own personal connection. So it's a relation to what is interesting to you. How can you apply this to your life, or what is the benefit that you are gaining, the interest that you have? And if you are going to relate that to others, being able to help them see that exact same type of connection, and how is this going to actually change your life? Or can what you're researching actually inspire somebody in a totally different direction than you ever even thought of?
The thing that makes it unique and what really drew it to my attention actually has so much to do with what we use, at least in Ohio, as our slogan. We make good men better. So much of Masonic education has to do with personal development, which I need in my life. Frankly, I think everybody needs in their life, but the fact that there's just such a select few of us that actually recognize it, that is important to me. Just kind of, growing up, finding your own path, doing things. The way it's done is just kind of a way that is built on establishing and fixing or enhancing a person's character. And that's intrinsic in just about everything I've seen, whether or not it's even focused in any of the papers or anything. It's something that, unless it's talking about just a subject, kind of a fixed point, it all has to do with talking about people who are of good character or who are of bad character and stayed that way or getting better. And that was important to kind of learn and, try to find role models. I mean, here's an example.
Oh, I thought you were going to give an example then.
Oh, no. I mean, here's an example that you got the entirety of the Brotherhood.
I'll never forget a few years ago, there was a fellow who was working on an elevator in this building I was working in. And I just struck up a small conversation with the guy. And, you think about an elevator. You just press the button, up you go, or you press the other button, you down you go, you open the doors. That's about all you do. Boy, he gave me a dissertation on the way elevators work. It was fascinating. He's telling us about how there's multiple stages as the elevator goes, so it doesn't feel jerky, how it handles cable snaps off and how it has brakes in it and all sorts of great stuff. It was really fascinating. And then he told me about escalators. I mean, weird things like that you think are so mundane and so simplistic. I'm sure there's many things in Masonic world that are the same. You look at you look at our symbols and think, oh, that's nice. But when somebody starts to dig into it, the history behind it and the meanings of it, and just why is there a curl at that one little spot, that can be quite fascinating.
It depends on what you are looking at, what you are researching. And as you get into the intricacies, sometimes it takes you down a path that you didn't even expect. And like as you're looking at individual brothers' lives, to realize, hey, this person's gone before you, and look at what they have actually accomplished. To me, that's kind of an inspiration. And kind of coming back over to Chuck's point too, as you are looking at the symbolism, one of the big questions I got is, why is this even here? What is the meaning of this? What does this mean? And I am working right now with Entered Apprentice, and it's giving me the opportunity to actually kind of help him become a true apprentice. But in that process, I'm learning myself, because it's like, okay, here's words that I have said. I've wondered what they mean, but I really don't know. And I'm actually starting to research it. And it's interesting as you look at different individuals who have written about this, what they have to say. And it's like, oh, I never understood this before. I never thought that. Boy, this has a totally different meaning than what I ever thought.
And I got to say, Rocky, man, you amaze me, because the day I was sitting there having some meal with you at one of the lodges, you started talking about the Boston Tea Party and how you found out what kind of tea it was, and you found the company that makes the tea, and they still make it. It's like, I would have never thought of that. It was the furthest thing from my mind, but it was fascinating to hear that kind of stuff.
Where that got driven home about how words change over time. There's a part in our ritual where I never understood it, because I'm like, this is a negative thing. Why in the world are we being taught to have this negative thing? And one night I was at lodge, and I was talking to Carl, and he looks at me and he goes, what? And I repeat it, and he's like, I don't think that's what it means. And I'm like, that is too what this word means, 100%. And I don't understand it. Why are we being taught something so negative? So the next week, he comes up to me and he hands me a piece of paper, and he goes, here's what the word means. And I look at the paper, and it had the totally opposite meaning of the word. And he goes, it took me a while to find this, but I finally found it. It is an old definition that has long since gone out of use. And he goes, it is what I was telling you it meant. And it was like, whoa, okay, so they are actually teaching you something positive, because it was something that was like, It's total contradiction to everything else.
We got to hear what the word was now.
I know, and I can't for the life of me remember it at this very
Oh,
moment.
'tis a pity.
It
Yeah.
is.
Well, that's your homework, Rocky. We expect to be updated on that word. But you brought up an interesting point, which is that just that conversation between you and another brother led to a significant piece of research, right? It wasn't an in-depth piece of research. It wasn't like it took months, hours, months, or years to do. But it was an important part of research that then led to the education of another brother. So with that in mind, how do we, there's a lot of this going on every day in lodges where people are doing little bits of research like this. As the Lodge of Research, how do we tap into that? How do we convince people that the things they're doing are important?
Once I had become a master mason, I was faced with the whole dilemma of what was said earlier. Memorize this, give it back, don't ask questions. I don't know the answer, just memorize this. That's what a mason is. And I'm going, but there's so much more. If it's supposed to be taking good men and making them better, there is more to this. And yet it did not really seem like most people were doing anything. It was more like a social club at Lodge. And, one of the first questions I asked is, what books should I be reading? How should I be gaining more? And that led me to you. And, it took you a little bit to come up with the direction path that I should go. And as I started that path, then said to you, okay, so what else? You go, it was actually making a connection with you, because otherwise I never would have known about the Ohio Lodge of Research. I never would have been put into contact with a group of similar brothers. And one of the things I've noticed in talking with everybody is a very common thread of I didn't feel exactly like I fit in my lodge. Nobody is really doing this in my lodge, and I'm kind of out there just by myself. I'm sort of this intellectual that wants to know more about esotericism, who wants to be able to apply this, that I'm searching for something, trying to improve my own life, but there's not really anybody else in my own lodge doing that. So it's trying to make those connections so that people actually learn about the Ohio Lodge of Research and go, wow, there are other Masons that think the way I do, that feel the way that I do, that want to do what I am doing, that value it.
I totally agree with that. Uh, and the thing is, the only thing I feel the exact same way. The only thing I would add to that is I'm in a lodge with a bunch of great guys. And I'm sure you'd probably say the same thing too. There is absolutely nothing against anyone there, but I feel the same way too. Like I say, the first thing I did was education. As a matter of fact, Brother Ashley would tell you, I tried to petition to become a member of the lodge before I was a master mason, and he came back and told me I couldn't do it. We are such a we're not a secret society. We're a society with secrets, and one of the secrets that I've noticed is that we tend to kind of not let other people know what's around us. And I'll use this lodge as an example. The last meeting I attended, I couldn't attend the last one physically, but the last virtual meeting where we did the presidents in the White House Masonic issues, there was just a single mention of something, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong, called the Phileas Society, something like that. You guys would know the correct pronunciation.
The Philalethes Society?
Thank you. That's it. I don't know. I did not know what that was. But generally, when I'm on at least a virtual meeting, and I do this too when I'm in a physical meeting, I'll actually write some of these things down if I'm kind of by myself, either on my phone or something, and I'll look it up. And when they said that, I'm like, that actually sounds like something interesting. So I like looked it up while the meeting was going on, and I became a member of it that night. And I started looking through through yesterday. I was looking at their back journals. You get their you pay to get their back archives. It's worth it. It's what I want in masonry, is learning about that. And that's how I learned about it. And that's kind of how people will learn that the stuff that they're doing can be worthwhile and maybe a benefit to other members, is by letting us know that it exists. And that doesn't always necessarily mean going, hey, Joe, there's this group you should really take a look at. It's talking about what we do, not just telling us that we exist.
A lot of things were going through my head here. One of the things we're doing, that I guess I'm doing pretty much, I set up a pretty good conversation with the people at Rocky's Lodge, Washington, and Brother Webb and I are going to exchange as giving programs. We're going to do education programs at each other's lodge once. So, you know, these kind of things would be kind of cool. I went around and visited several lodges for their inspections within the last few weeks. I had no idea where these places were, first of all, but then, of course, I'm new. And how active they are. They got a chili cook-off at the one place. They're doing all kinds of things every week at one of the other lodges. Wow. Why don't we know about this? It's hard to see.
You know, I never would have known that you could go to other lodges when I first started out, and got told. So I started meeting others. And that's where it's kind of like, I also discovered then you aren't just an exact island. You go, there are one or two over at this lodge doing that. Oh, there's one over here. And you do get to have those other conversations that also tend to stimulate you and sometimes lead you in other directions where you're like, oh, well, this is something I'd really like to look up. I never thought about this. And yet by doing that, you're also making this brother feel valuable, who is kind of there going, well, I'm kind of an island and I don't have appreciation. And all of a sudden you're in this conversation, they're like, holy cow, somebody actually values what I'm thinking, what I've been doing.
Being a new Master Mason, I don't know a lot yet, and I'm kind of afraid to say too much, because somebody's probably already done it. But the thing that's amazing is, first of all, I don't have to know everything, but I do know Masonic lodges have been around for, as you said, David, 300 years. Baseball hasn't been around that long. Football hasn't been around that long. Tennis hasn't been around that long. The United States was just this little patch of grass back in those days for us from Europe. It's crazy. Can you think of too many things that have been around that long? Maybe the church, not too much. So something's there. And I'm going to be learning what that something is eventually. The other thing, it's kind of ethereal, but the people in my lodge, I like them, but I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know. Maybe it's the way they comb their hair or something, but you know, I'm going to find that out eventually too. I'm starting to like other people too for that peculiar unknown reason. Maybe that's what Masonry is.
I would encourage you, Chuck. I mean, you made a comment there, and it's absolutely the way I felt when I was brand new to the fraternity as well, which is, you know, I'm a new guy. I don't know anything. I better be quiet and keep my mouth shut. So, you know, so it's already been done. And I would encourage you, I wish somebody had given me this advice at that point. I encourage you to do the exact opposite. You are at the perfect time where you have ignorance as your excuse. Right? The beauty of ignorance is ignorance can be fixed, right? You know, it's just a matter of acquiring information. So you have ignorance on your side. If you ask a question or say something and somebody goes, well, that's already been done 100 times, you can go, well, then how's come nobody's told me? It's, you know, so you have that opportunity to really, I think, openly explore with a kind of a built-in excuse if it doesn't exactly go the way you think it should or that you want it to. Just my random bit of advice. Rocky's sick and tired of that by now.
That's going on a bumper sticker, I can tell you that much. It'll be on the back of my car next week.
Part of the reason the three of you are here is that Chuck, I know we've had some conversations with you about, psychology and that part of the world. Elie's taken us down a completely different road with music, and Rocky's followed different paths, but I'm going to throw him under the stamp category right now, just because that's completely different. And so, the three of you have definitely taken different routes to just history. How, other than what you've already done, how would you define or categorize the research, Masonic research, and in order to encourage people to get started?
If you're trying to do things that are not in history, it's going to obviously incorporate the lessons of the past, but it kind of goes along with, again, what I look at a lot is evaluation of the self, evaluation of the world. Um, so much of it is philosophy and philosophical. Um, that's, I think, there's so much there that's unexplored simply because of what you're talking about, Dave. There's not a lot of there's so much work being done about what's come before, but not nearly as much of this is what this means. What Rocky's talking about. This is what this means. This is how we do it, and this is that's the sort of thing that I've been reading a lot more of on the Philalethes Society. Did I pronounce that right?
Philalethes?
Philalethes Society. I'll get that right one year.
And I'm probably telling you wrong too, so it'll be my fault when it's wrong later down the road.
You mentioned about my going at the moment in the towards stamps, and for me, as I looked at that to begin with, I was trying to meld different interests together, and yet at the same token, what I'm attempting to do is to interest people in Masonry. So you go, I've got this avenue where you go, yeah, you might have a Mason that's into stamps, but most people that are into stamps have no clue about Masonry. So if I can end up weaving a story through stamps that is a compelling story, my hope is that people go, huh, I had no earthly idea about this. Well, let me find out more about Masonry and hopefully be able to point them into the path of this is what we are about. This is what we are attempting to do, and hopefully cause an attraction. That's on the one hand. On the other hand is the flip of that, and that is you take a Mason who might have an interest in stamps but never thought about doing anything with this, and that gets them further involved. But also you go like Elie with music. When he gave his presentation, I was like, never ever would have I thought anything about this. And, I'm not like most people in that I really don't have an interest in music, but his presentation was like, drew me in and was like, I had no earthly idea. So it is causing another Mason to be able to go, I never thought I could actually do something with my hobby, with my other interest, and it actually have a connection to Masonry itself. And part of it is almost like the packaging of it. You go, because of Charlie, I ended up joining Toastmasters and have been learning how to speak better. And so a lot of the speeches that I give, they are more of a historical nature. So for instance, in doing research, came across a person by the name of Israel Ludlow. He's a brother. He is the person credited with surveying the most amount of Ohio of any person ever. And there's all kinds of different things. He is the person that did Cincinnati. He was the founder of Hamilton, the founder of Dayton. And you go, in presenting a couple of these different things with Toastmaster, there was somebody that goes, tell me more about Masonry.
Mhm.
Started talking to him. A couple weeks goes by, goes, if I was to become a Mason, like, what is it that you guys are trying to do? Talked a bit about it, goes, I want to become one. It's in the process of actually petitioning and becoming a member. So you go, what you do, that is an avenue for both people outside as well as inside the lodge.
I got to say, Ellie, I liked your presentation too. I'm a amateur musician. When I went through the fellowcraft education, I saw Dorian and Ionian, and I thought, those are scales in music.
Hmm.
But then I asked you about it, and you said, I don't think there's really a relation between the two. I'm glad you and I thought the same thing.
Yeah. The words mean different things.
So what do you guys have on the table? What do you as far as the research goes, what ideas do you have? What's coming down the pike that we can look forward to?
I gave a little bit of it away. I'm looking at, I said a lot of what's interesting me about Masonry is personal development. I am trying to find out more about the development of character and how that was used as a teaching tool in Masonry's. I don't seem to find any actual a direct connection, which is not unexpected, but I don't. I'm trying to find that link between the bridge between Masonic text and or Masonic discussions in lodge and what was actually put out for the general public. I'm trying to find that personal development link.
So I guess the thing that I'm looking at right now, first I got two things I'm doing. I'm working my way through the Royal Schofield Society. Man, that's a lot of work. But I got to do a lot of research on that. So we'll see what comes out of that.
Mhm.
What's been rolling around my head is going to different lodges around the state and taking a picture of their building and trying to find old pictures when the building was just first created and doing a small book that's this is it now, this is then, now, then, to be able to compare those out. The other thing I'm doing is I took the liberating structures that I gave a presentation about, and I put together a little presentation about it for lodge education. I ran it in my lodge. I'm going to run it in yours next, Rocky, and I'm polishing it every time I do it. And eventually I'll have something pretty good that we can share with other people to use. I'm going to incorporate other things like that too. And I've been working on Masonic bingo. So, and the way that works is instead of numbers, you have different terms. And when the bingo caller reads out a number, they don't read a number, they read out a description. And then you got to go over and find out what that description represents and pick your number. That way people can start to learn, especially newer folks, learn certain terms.
You had said about going around to lodges and taking pictures of them and doing a then and now. If you actually, it takes time to find them, but there are actually old postcards that will have the pictures of lodges a lot of times, especially the old lodges, that'll give you those back then pictures. So the question that you had asked as to what I am working on, at the moment, I haven't gotten a reply back, but I've actually put my application in to do a stamp exhibit at a show that is judged. And so I am still in the process, kind of like most things that you and I joke about. I do things backwards. You really should have it finished before you put your application in. I put my application in and I'm still working on finishing it. So I'm still doing a lot of the research that's necessary to assemble it and acquiring stamps that go along with the message that I am telling. And it was a melding It's looking at the events leading up to the American Revolution, up through what in Boston, in Massachusetts, they refer to as Evacuation Day, the day that the British finally left Boston. And while we tend to know all about the bigger figures, the generals and such not of the American Revolution who happened to be Masons, I took a different tact and I looked at individuals who were Masons, but I wanted a personal connection to them. So I also melded genealogy research into it and found for each of these events very distant. We're talking like, say, your eighth time, four times removed cousin, but that this person was distantly related, was a Mason, and had some part in the event. So that's kind of where my research at the moment has been, is melding all of that together to come up with a presentation exhibit that hopefully is accepted.